Well, welcome to our panel this afternoon on establishing your customer service strategy. We live in this age of convenience where consumers expect their delivery tomorrow, they expect everything on demand, whether that's Netflix or Uber. We did some research recently at HubSpot that said that 80% of customers have left a business due to poor customer service. They want things faster. They want to communicate with businesses through up to 13 different channels. And their expectations have simply never been higher. They want you to know who they are before they even get there. And there's a real cost to businesses for not meeting these expectations. You might know it costs a lot more money to acquire a new customer than to retain an existing one. So this really matters. And the thing is about customers today is they're also your biggest advocates. 60% of people will trust what their other friends or family say about a business more than they will trust a company. So it's a really important topic, and I'm really thrilled to have a great panel here today to sort of help to talk about some of the strategy and some of the ways we can meet these expectations today. So here we have Fiona, who's from EdSmart.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, thanks to have you here. We have Stephane, who's come from Maestrana. And we have Frank, who's here from Shelley Apps. So all three founders. So I think we have a nice cross-section of different industries here, and I think we're well positioned to have a good talk about how we can succeed in this space. So I thought it might be good just to start with a question that I get quite a lot, which is, people talk a lot about customer success these days. It used to be customer service teams. Now it's all about customer success teams. What is the difference? And I thought that might be a good question to sort of kick off with, whether there is a difference there. So maybe, Fiona, we'll start with you, whether how your organisation sees the difference between customer service and customer success.
Thank you, Jonathan, because I think we do things in our own unique and possibly eccentric way, which is we develop the product often in co-creation with the customer. And that's not to say that we customise, because we don't, but we really, really work very carefully to make a dance almost with the customer, whereby they're inputting into our product roadmap, we're solving their problems as we go. It's not really customer support though. We solve problems, and at the end of it we usually get something that we can work on for them, and we leave them often deliriously happy. And why I think that's important, and it probably fits into the customer success bucket, is that I want my customers to be really sticky. I want them to stay with me, and if they can give me some more that I can solve for them, then we're still dancing, and I want to keep them dancing. I know it doesn't quite answer your question, and we're a little different, but we have a philosophy around our customers are more than partners, they're our dance partners, and we don't want any wallflowers.
I think that's a really nice analogy there. Have there been situations where you feel that there's something that might have started as a reactive conversation with the customer has really turned into something you may never have found had you not had that initial kind of contact, and it turned into real success?
I can tell you that when we first founded our business and the technology, it came out of me throwing a hissy fit around pulling paper forms out of my 3 kids' school bags, and it happened to be that day there was something like 4 forms, and I just went, this is busy work for mums. I don't want to do this anymore. This is really terrible. And I just gave it to my partner and said, it's your turn. I've done this for like 17 years. Done. And the really good thing about that act of frustration is that him being the technologist went, well, it can't be that bad. I'll dig in and see what's really going on here. And what was really going on here, he found over the next 8 weeks, was that I wasn't exaggerating, that frustration was born of something real. And he collected 32 paper forms over those 8 weeks, lined them up on the kitchen counter and said, okay, you're right. If this is a problem for our family, it's probably a problem for other families with school-age children too. The interesting thing for us, maybe the reactive thing was we went to our principals and said, hey, look, as parents, this is a problem. We're going to solve this by this prototype, and showed it to them. And they said to us, oh, that's very good. But did you know that inside the school, just about all the administration is run on these type forms as well? So starting with something just sitting on our side of the fence, when we went a little further, we actually found out what the real business gold was. And that's in our DNA. We keep going further and we ask a few more questions. I think we do this natively inside our business. So a customer might call us and say, look, I just had trouble. I built a form, but I got this field wrong and now I'm panicking. And we'll both fix it for them, but we'll also have a conversation. We'll also get them into a space where they're back to happy, because it's really important to us they use our product and they're happy using it.
That's great. Stephane, I thought, obviously quite a different industry you're in. Cloud management, sort of, I guess you're dealing with people that probably have some quite complex technical challenges, and I'm sure there's a lot of reactive stuff there. How do you relate to that, and how do you think about customer success?
For us, first, I have to admit to Salesforce that we stole customer success from them. So let's be honest here. And now that we're a public company, I shouldn't probably say that, but that's it. It's out there. For us, what we do platforms for small and medium business, but we distribute exclusively through large clients. We've got the large US banks and Australian banks and finance institutions. So the notion of customer success for us is real, because essentially we have to have the SMEs use the platforms, but they're not Maestrano platforms. So we've got a few 100,000 SMEs using our tools, and they have no idea Maestrano even exists. But they've got to be successful and well supported, which in return makes our enterprise clients happy and confident in the platforms and keep using the platform and developing on it. So it's really, for us, it's segregated between support for the SMEs, so that they use the tool that's ultimately designed for them, whilst providing literally customer success to the enterprise clients. And frankly, the reactivity side of things is probably 20%, because in your introduction you say people want to come to you and they expect you to know them even before they talk to you. Yeah. It's the same with enterprise clients. If we wait for the 20% of reactivity, we're already behind, and we have already to manage a degree of frustration. So the job is the 80% where we actually volunteer and we say, look, we understand your strategy. Your SME clients are reacting like this and this and this. We suggest that you do X, Y, Z to address that demand. So I know that people see support as something quite reactive. I'm of the view that support or customer success is actually extremely proactive, or should be extremely proactive, because you essentially want to give a gold experience throughout your value chain.
It's a really good point. If you're always proactive, then these issues, both you're serving both needs. You're serving the problems as well as the opportunities.
And sometimes it also bites you in the back, right? Let's be clear. I mean, you want to be so proactive that you will suggest something fantastic, and genuinely you start implementing, and then you hit a severe roadblock. So you sort of dig the hole for yourself. And then that's where as you mentioned previously, that's where the relationship with the clients comes into play, where you got to be more in a partnership sort of relationship than a client-supplier.
So we've hit those holes where we've got so far out front with the relationship and that dance I was talking about, that their expectation is now magical.
I get that. Yeah. Do your magic.
I think you could probably say that's a lot of customers probably have quite magical expectations. It just takes, one Netflix or one Uber to set their expectations, and there's no going back. People expect things to be a step ahead. So Frank, I'd love to get your take on this. You're in a quite different position from these guys, having, being in a very early stage in your company, and I'm sure you're giving a lot of thought to success and customer service, but the pieces are probably just falling into place at the moment. So how have you how are you feeling about it in terms of taking the first steps, and how far ahead are you looking on this?
Well, I guess, as you said, so we're in the early stages. We're actually we haven't launched yet, so we're still in beta. So for us, the customer is really everything. So, which doesn't mean that we do everything the customer wants. So we can't, of course. So we still have to prioritize. But everything circles around the customer and what the customer really needs. And those are the things where we try to get the success for our company out of those communications, being very close to the customer, understanding their actual needs, and then carve those things out and bring it back into the product. So it's really a very lean and a very repetitive a process with short iterations, which I hope sets us on a success with our customers and ultimately makes our customers successful.
And I'm guessing you're probably still in rapid development mode as well. Has some of the customer service feedback you've had actually been informing your development, and have you had has it sort of had a major impact on anything that's going on in terms of your products right now?
Yeah, well, what we try to do is we really try to link actually development into customer service. So basically the problems that appear with the software or the gaps. So we are discussing this with the development organization, with the developers, and say, hey, imagine. Or we get them on the phone even now and then, it depends. Imagine that's the situation, so that's your problem. So now how would you solve that problem for yourself? So we really want to put them in the shoes of the customers to have this empathy and really appreciate the problem, rather than being locked away somewhere and saying, okay, I've got a specification or a Trello ticket which I work on, and then when the ticket is delivered, my job is done, because that's not the case.
So as someone that's come through this quite freshly, what would you say to sort of startups in the audience today who might be right at that point where it's time to establish a customer service strategy? There's so many options out there. I'm being given lots of different advice. What have you found from your experience were the best 3 things you did to sort of get started?
Well, I guess the first thing is never lose sight of your customer, really. So that's paramount, and everything else builds up on top of that. So of course, once you go through the cycle of your startup is growing and you got more customers on board or more beta users you work with, you need to get stuff a little bit more organized. And one of the challenges with that is actually the more you get organization in your customer service, the further you get away from the customer. Yeah. And that's one of the things we really want to prevent from happening. So even if we grow as an organization, we want to make sure that we are back to the roots and exposed to the customer as often as we can. So I guess that's maybe only 2 things, but
that's I think they're really good points, and I think less is more when you're starting a strategy like this. So I think that's a really good segue onto kind of my next question I had for you all, which was, we talked about how as your business grows, the risk is you move further from the customer, and I think this is where technology sort of can play a role. A lot of the things we talked about here about human interactions and how obviously in an ideal world we have humans reaching out sort of proactively and finding those opportunities. But once you scale, and you can scale rapidly, how do you not drop the ball on this? And so I wanted to talk a bit about how technology has helped you to scale, particularly in the customer service sector, and sort of what sort of tools you're using to to adapt to this new world of high expectations and and turning service into success. So perhaps, Fiona, have you got any examples of some software or tools that are working for you?
Well, we use HubSpot.
Well, it wasn't a plug, by the way. I wasn't.
So do we.
But as you know, as we mentioned, it's we had Zoho as our CRM before, which was a nightmare really, and we moved to HubSpot, and it's a bit of a Rolls Royce compared to a Mini. So we're learning, and it's improved our sales process because our data is so much cleaner now. But I think that we're just novices, and as you said to me, it probably is good that we all put ourselves through the academy and really understand how HubSpot can be used as a powerful tool, because we sell a powerful tool, and we need to get it organised inside our business to have powerful organisation. I have a problem, and it's not solved yet, and I don't have the solution, but I'm scoping for it, which is we've got 409 schools, and probably going to sign a contract that's going to bring on another 1,000 over the next 12 months. And so far we have had customer service that has been people customer service. And we're going to have a mix of people and automation. So right now I'm looking at how much, what is the balance, what is the ratio, and what are the things, the touch points that really need us to be there, and what do not. So for me, I can't tell you what those tools and things are because I'm in the scoping phase, but what I can tell you is that we're not going to lose the people piece. The people piece is going to be in there somewhere, because I see the people piece as being magic, and it's also the magic that feeds back into the product. So we're not going to close out or separate product and people ever, even when we have 100,000 schools.
Yeah, they're two are intrinsically linked. But I loved your point earlier on there about how it's almost about knowing when to get out of the way, right? When is that person actually not serving the process, and when is it actually costing your business too much money? So Stephane, perhaps have you had any similar experiences? Any tools? You don't have to plug HubSpot.
No, but we use HubSpot, but as a CRM, it's really good, by the way. Now, for us, to be honest, I mean, Maestrano is 4 years old, 4.5. So 4.5 years ago, we were a white sheet of paper. And today we've got offices in New York, London, Dubai, Sydney. We're listed entities. So we've grown probably a bit more rapidly than I anticipated, to be honest, which is one of these good problems to have. And I hate that expression. But we failed 3 times in establishing our customer success strategy. The first time we went 100% on just the humans. And that's all well, and we provided like gold service, if you want. But the challenge we had with that was that it was absolutely not scalable. And from that, a lesson that we learned the hard way was that when you're at a stage where you're building your product or your service, you need to embed your customer success, or call it super, whatever you want, in what you're building, because ultimately you just want to be able to plug the dependencies. So then the second time, we went onto a bunch of tools that we still use. So we use, of course, Jira for our ticketing when we lodge a support request. We use Zendesk as the sort of customer portal where they can interact with us. And we use Intercom as the online chat, because we've got a tracking functionality and so on and so forth. And we can discuss about which ones don't plug into HubSpot. So we've got the string of tools. But then this time we went way too far on automation. And we did exactly what you referred to earlier. We lost the touch with the actual human being. So we had a great rate at the tickets emitted and solved and closed and everything, but our sort of NPS, end user satisfaction, was free falling. So the third time around, we made a mix of both. And then we had challenges because we discovered that, of course, we went for cheap resources, support resource, as you do, and that was a disaster. Let's be honest, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. We really had monkeys. And our clients were not really happy with that. So we realized that actually that saving I was making on the expense was actually costing me a fortune in terms of top line growth. So then went back to, okay, let's pay a little bit more, get some people that we can confidently outsource with, that have a standard of quality, plus using our tools. And right now, finger crossed, we're tracking well on customer success. But it took the best part of 2.5 years for us to really get to a point where we're comfortable. And we just won a contract with a large bank in the US. In 6 months' time, they'll put 100,000 small and medium business on the platform. I'm really happy we solved the issue ahead of that, because that would have been a disaster.
Another great example of kind of succeeding after failure, and how it's not always a straightforward process. You can go too far into technology, and
we suffered.
Yeah,
we suffered.
So Frank, we talked about how too much technology can almost be overburdening for customers, and finding that balance between the human and technology. What have your first sort of forays into technology been with the customer service side of things?
Well, I guess it depends on the products and services you're offering, or services you're offering. But for me, it really starts with the product itself, because if the product is built in the right way, if it's intuitive, self-explanatory, and you already take away a heap of customer support you actually have to do later on. So I think that's where we really want to start. So we want to make things super easy, super intuitive, build in artificial intelligence, help the customer, even going one step back then at the point of sales, even trying to position the product and package up the product in a way that actually addresses the customer's need in the first place. And then when you roll out the product, then actually you have a much higher satisfaction rate and you get less calls. So the next thing is really things like tutorials, and it's tooltips and simple things like that. You build in a product or a little chat system where people can actually reach out. And some people, I like the human component. That's really important. So eventually, if I talk to somebody, a real person, so I'm really happy. But I do not always want to talk to a real person. So what I also want to do is I want to have quick access to something which is just like a help system, or which is just like a frequently asked questions. So all of those things, So what I learned, and that's not only from the startup, but back from my corporate world, is that customers really want to have it their way. So we basically have to mix up all of those things and provide all of those things, that no matter where and when, customers can reach out and get a solution to their problem at their leisure, really. So, and that's what we're trying to do, building stuff in early, and then only then building up the organization around currently the early adopters, later than the customers.
That's a really nice point. You were sort of saying how, sometimes you just got to do the basics right. You're talking about content, about how, I think if you jump too far ahead and let's get too far into AI or automation, have you actually missed out on just providing really good help center content or making that searchable? And I think that falls into the same category as customer service technology, right? Helping people to surface answers for themselves and taking the pressure off the people to have to do it for them. So it's kind of important to do both, right? Like do the sort of automated stuff, but also do the basics well.
Exactly, you want to do the basics right, but of course you don't.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
We fail quite a bit, and we fail often, but at least we try to learn from it, and then correct our course, and then continue on our path.
But if I may, just on a point touch on, one thing we noticed for us, customer success is also very geographically dependent. For instance, when we had our first clients in the UAE, and we're very happy with a phone line and whatever you want, they just don't call. They absolutely don't call. It has to go through intercom or chat or something like that. Conversely, in the US, when we started putting the chats, because we're talking to SME and US-based small businesses and some from Texas, and they call. They can't stand the chat. They don't want to have anything to do with an online chat because to them it's not real. So then you start to have to adjust. Europe is middle ground. So we had to sort of adapt the tools to what the market actually expects. And of course we didn't know that. So of course we fail a little bit again.
Yeah, it's a tough world. You've got to be all things to all people now, and regional differences, behavioural differences. Everyone's got their own style of communication now. Which is a good sort of segue onto. I want to sort of drill in a bit deeper on communication specifically, and we've sort of mentioned bots in passing and how that's messaging is here to stay. It's I'm sure pretty much everyone in this room has got a Facebook Messenger on their phone or WhatsApp. It is increasingly through companies like Intercom becoming easier for businesses to use those channels to interact with customers. Where do you and it does vary by country. Obviously, we have to have regional sensitivities to where this is more important. But is this something that for Fiona has this crossed your mind to actually get into the world of actually building your own presence on a bot, for example, and so you can actually interact with people through the way they are using every day?
So we do, but it really just for first visitors to the website, and we steer them through a pathway so that we capture key information about them to just identify their readiness for our kind of product, because at this stage not every school in Australia or in the world is ready for us, and we're pretty much pitching at the early adopters. So we do use a bot to capture that first run of information. So it's not completely people. So I've got to say we've been experimenting with tools and knowledge bases from the beginning. We just don't over-rely on it, and we tweak as we go on the automation side. We just think that people have the best observations around what customers are doing with that information. And we put the heavy lifting back onto the knowledge base when we know that knowledge is being served up in a way the customers want it. Because the first cut isn't always the best cut. We found that we have to marketify some of the explanations because the technical writers, it's incoherent for some of the customers. So we do use bots, but in a really basic way so far. In time, I can see a bot being able to be commanded to develop a form out of a template history that's in a customer's dashboard. I can see that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing the power of bots now, but you're absolutely also right. It's got to be right the first time. You don't want to disappoint through it. If you don't want to overpromise, underdeliver with these kind of things. Stephane, is this something? It sounds like it's something you're already well and truly into.
Yeah, my co-founder is a bot, so we got one. No, don't say I said that, the poor guy.
Maybe too far.
No, we don't. It's a bit like what Fiona just said. We don't really use bots as the primary tool. It's the same. It's a bit like the first contact. But one thing we've noticed is everyone knows, or it's well accepted now, when you tell someone something, that it will take an average of 3 times for the information to be processed and to be retained. And for whatever reason, when you talk about support or customer success, we consider, wrongly, that we're going to tell a client something once and it's all done and dusted. So what we do, however, is when we got that discussion, be it on the chat or by phone or whatever, we systematically follow up with emails or text message or whatever means of communication we have. And without realizing it, the clients that contacted us actually have a repeat of 3 times the information they asked us. Now, in a non-invasive way, but and what we've seen doing that, when we measure the number of times certain clients come back to the chat and the support, since we've done that, it's actually drastically reduced. Because they will ask you something, and fair enough, a week after, the scratch guy said, oh, what did they say again? And if you had that sort of, here is your little reminder, it sort of works. So to that degree, we sort of botify. But I don't think we'll go much further than that. Again, we're dealing with small and medium business owners down the track, and they need the sort of human touch. So.
I'm guessing there's some complexities with the things they're coming to you with. Yeah. It'd be hard to get a bot to do. How about yourself, Frank? Have you thought about messaging as a communication channel for your customers?
So in terms of the bot?
Yeah, building a bot, or just using Facebook Messenger, for example, as a way to talk to customers.
Well, we do messaging through different means. So whatever, actually our customers, we're dealing with about 50 customers currently on a daily basis. So whatever they prefer, that's actually what we do. So there's still a variety in there, and it's not really a big process behind it. So, and I guess it's too early to build in something like a bot. Although we are building bots and artificial intelligence in our product, eventually we may use it then to that advantage as well in support, but currently we don't. So it's still at a level where we say, okay, we want to really handle it manually, and then just slowly, with a growing customer numbers, then actually go into a more structured approach.
Yeah, I guess you want to sort of just have the human touch learn as well. You can probably learn a bit more as you go along. So this is really good to hear the very different use cases for that so far. And it's probably one question I'm sure with a lot of startups in the room that everyone's sort of wondering is, this is all very well and good, but what's the cost of this? There's you're probably in the early stage if you're in the early stage of a company, you're working out where's my money best spent on acquisition or kind of on serving my customers and retaining them. How do you find this balance, Fiona, between like in investment in service, and how do you know if you're really getting an ROI from that?
So we sort of landed a funding round in May, and we're right in the middle of. We have some customer support now, which we really didn't have before because of that. Return on investment, we're trying to make sure that our customer experience side, and we call it experience, and we want every customer to have all their problems solved and have an awesome experience with us, plus give us new stuff for our own knowledge and our own growth. So that we view it from that point of view. We have a whole customer experience strategy. That means our customer support is handled out of that philosophical framework. Right now, we're down a couple of salespeople, so we're spending more on the customer support side. Though I must say, going to my point about product and people, we have a customer service engineer who sits between devs and customer experience. So these are not siloed roles in our company. There's actually like a smooth curve from dev through to CX. It might not be what anyone else is doing, but like I said, we're willing to do things in a unique and eccentric way, and it works for us. The ROI, I think, is coming because our CX team is now starting to land big deals, and therefore they're also bringing money in. So we're all salespeople to a degree.
It's true, yeah. I mean, sales does not end after the sale, I guess. And
is that enough ROI for my CX people? Because I think they're doing well.
Yeah, I think it's not always it's about being scrappy as well, isn't it? And about and often quite hard to measure. How about you, Stephane? Do you see are you at the stage where you could actually say what you spent on customer services?
I don't have a choice. Being listed, one thing about the London Stock Exchange, because we're listed in London, one thing when you go for the IPO, whether you like it or not, you have to review all your costs and revenue and your 3 years forecast and whatnot. So as a company, in 4 years, we raised a total of $17 million. We approximately have 15% of all that money that went exclusively on customer success. We have a structure similar to you, where the CX engineers are actually embedded in the team. And moving forward, that will jump to 20% of our expenditure. Now, having said that, one thing that we set out as a strategy about a year ago, when we decided to go for an IPO, we decided that we would give ourselves 28 months to transform the CX component into a profit center. So then the question became, okay, we know our cost base, we know how it's going to grow, we know the quality levels that we want, because we suffered to get to where we wanted. The question then became, how do we monetize customer success? And because of our particular topology, where it's a success of the enterprise channel that guarantees the success of the SMEs and so on and so forth, we actually could relatively easily monetize that component to the enterprise channel. So normally we're tracking a bit ahead, and that component will be profitable in 12 months from now. And it's important because lots of SaaS companies never reach profitability. Look at Xero, which is a fantastic business. I mean, they're valued $6 billion. They've got huge revenues, but they're still not profitable. And why they're not profitable? First, because the cost of acquisition of one of their customers is about 5 years of revenue. Secondly, when you look at the support they provide and everything, it is not a cost that they can make profitable. Now, it's fine for them because they've been clear from the outset that, okay, they were all about the top line and the growth there. But for a company like us, I didn't feel comfortable with that. And frankly, going to the London Stock Exchange with a story like that, we would never have managed to float. So hopefully we're on the track, and in 12 months I'll be sitting here and telling you that's great, it's a profit center, making margin on support.
Stephane, I think ours is similar. We're not listed, but I'm seeing that our CX is actually bringing money in, and that probably in 12 to 18 months it's going to cover its costs.
And I think it should, because historically, for whatever reason, we all consider that support is a sort of mandatory gift that we give a bit begrudgingly to the clients because we have to do it. I actually agree with Fiona. The support people are almost your best salespeople. Ultimately, they know so much the product, the clients, how they use it. I know that all my sales guys, when they've got a complicated RFP or something, the first people they will call are our support people because they are the cold face. So they're actually your best sales guys. Now, it's a bit of a shame to have sales guys that don't bring in revenue. That's a bit unorthodox. So if you scratch your head smartly, you can really make support actually profitable.
That's a really good point. It's a long-term investment, and also the other thing to add to that is you can't underestimate the value of a happy customer. And there's they are your future marketing channel as well. And
the negative value of an unhappy customer.
Yeah, you can't underestimate the power of that group. So Frank, am I still on? Frank, so how have you thought about the investments you've made so far, and is this something you're measuring at the moment, or you just, it's obviously essential to have in place, there's no way around it, but how have you seen it come back to reward the business?
But currently we don't really measure a support cost per customer because actually, as I said, so we have about 50 customers. So basically what you can do is you can just divide every dollar we spent on the whole thing by 50. That doesn't turn out to be a profitable business. But what I'm saying with that is basically at this stage it's really hard. So it's really about keeping that customer happy. It's about seeing what if you start to then scale the business, what you can learn, and where you can rationalize it to the point that it actually becomes profitable. But that is only something which is possible probably when you reach 1,000 customers or so.
And it's hard to put a price on that learning, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So that's the kind of more sort of, I guess, financials. What about the sort of softer metrics that are also incredibly important now, which like we talked about NPS briefly. NPS is obviously the gold standard in measurement for a lot of businesses, and it's going to help you know if you're doing a good job, right? If all this investment you've made is actually worthwhile, and you can collect that even if you don't know the financial reward, you know the kind of happiness of the customers, I guess, with what you're doing. So have you implemented this kind of thing yourself, Fiona, and would you have any recommendations for how to measure that?
We haven't implemented NPS, and I have some issues with it, because I actually think if you're going to ask a customer a question like, would you refer this product or this experience to the people you know, there is a potential that they wouldn't. And if they wouldn't, I'd actually like to know what that is at that point, not later. So I have a problem with that process, which is why we're looking at other technologies to maybe ask a softer question, but to get better data around why they're unhappy in that moment. Because I know, and Stephane, you probably know this too, that if you have a problem, if you can solve it quickly, it won't get out into the wild, and you will turn the problem into happiness and satisfaction. So not NPS for that reason, and we're trying to find a way around it, and we're possibly going to go with a local solution and something bespoke.
So is it about the kind of, would you be asking your customers at present, would they recommend you? Or is that something you would have a...
Well, we ask them anyway. We get them to do case studies, and we get them to go on videos, and we're shameless. I come from a content background, and I was a broadcaster. So I will shamelessly pin them to a wall and say, tell me how it is really. And if it's broadcastable, we'll grab it and use it.
So I guess you're just using kind of much more, you're just making that much more visible anyway, which is great. Yeah, like turning that into content. Fantastic.
Ultimately, I agree with Fiona. For us, I mentioned NPS, but to us, it's a tertiary measurement. I'm very top-line driven, to the risk of sounding materialistic, but to me, a customer is happy if they keep giving me money. And frankly, if you call a customer, or for instance, there are things I use and I love Virgin Australia, I love Etihad, for instance, and sometimes I'm really pissed off at them. And if someone make a survey to me at that point in time, I'm going to give them a 0. And it's not representative of what I actually think. So we do have plenty of customers, SMEs get really frustrated on little knacks and issues, but like Fiona said, the gold we get is when we solve it. And we don't need to ask, for NPS award, because when we get on intercom, thanks guys, you've been fantastic, thank you so much, and they stick around, we know they're okay. And if they're not okay, we're going to just ask them what's going poorly. So this sort of KPIs and metrics, ultimately when you grow and you end up being in a liquidity event of some form, no one cares really about your NPS. People care about how your top line is going.
I mean, I guess it's like how what you may not know is which of those are actually actively advocating for you. That's the one to measure. How about yourself, Frank? Have you thought about sort of how to generate advocacy from the 50 customers you have currently? You probably have a very direct relationship with a lot of them, I imagine.
Yeah, that's true. So relationship is very direct. But what we really want to do is we want to make sure that we convert their trust really. So we're looking, of course, at the success, meaning that they stay with us, they continue to use the product, but also that we use them basically to support our organical and hopefully viral growth at some point, which means they are the people that go out and recommend you as a product, not necessarily by ticking a box, but actually talking about you and spreading the word and saying, hey, those guys are doing something, and I know in which situation you are, and it may be an interesting solution, or may help you, may provide you with value. And I guess that's really, other than this particular customer creating continuous revenue or sticking with you, what you get out of them really is when they go out and actually replace your salespeople or add on top of your sale and spread the word. And I think that's where we want to get to.
Great. Well, I think that's our end point. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you.